sisterhood paradox out in the world as a scientist and as a behavioural specialist. The research and the evidence in this book is going to blow you away. I don't know that anyone is prepared for what I reveal and just how pervasive this is. The prevalence is that 70% of women are bullied by other women. That's the reality. I'm an organisational psychologist, high-performance coach and dreamweaver, and I've spent the last 20 years working with organisations, teams and leaders all around the world, helping them be the best when it matters the most. I'm passionate about advancing human potential and moving the world forward around issues that matter and change the game for us all.
Hey, I'm Gillett, and this is the Power of Women podcast. We're a platform that showcases and celebrates the strength, resilience and achievements of women from all walks of life. But today we're shining a light on a more uncomfortable truth, one that's often not spoken aloud, because whilst we talk about women breaking barriers and lifting each other up, there's a quieter, more complex story playing out in workplaces. What happens when the greatest threat to a woman's career progression is another woman? Joining me is the workplace psychologist, author and global advisor, Vanessa Vershaw. Her new book, The Sisterhood Paradox, confronts the question so many avoid: why do women bully other women at work? And more importantly, what do we do to change the culture that allows it? Vanessa Vershaw, welcome to the Power of Women podcast.
Di, thank you so much for the opportunity to come on your show and for giving the platform to speak about such an important game-changing topic.
Love doing it, Vanessa. So, firstly, congratulations on the release of your new book, The Sisterhood Paradox, and I do have a copy beside me on the desk, and I can see it in the background in your studio as well. Why was now the right time to confront this topic head on?
It's such an interesting question, Di. You know, there are a couple of things that precipitated the passion and the energy to get this book out. The first one was in November last year when the World Economic Forum released its data on our evolution in terms of advancing gender equality. And the figures showed us that over the past decade, in spite of all the attention on diversity, equity, inclusion and gender equality, we've only shifted the dial globally by 1%.
Very, very modest shift.
Modest shift, if at all. And in Australia, the figures are even more harrowing. In fact, when we start to look at the stats in Australia, we've actually gone backwards in some cases and even fossilised in others. And so when I was looking at the reasons that the World Economic Forum put out as to why we had gone backwards, nowhere in there did I see a mention of how women are getting in their own way and how women are blocking other women from getting ahead.
Interesting.
And the other incidents that occurred that really kind of catapulted me into this space was the situation that occurred with a little girl in a school in New South Wales, Charlotte O'Brien, who was bullied by other girls at school and ended up taking her own life. Now, when I looked further into what actually happened there, the parents reported the incident to the school. They told them what happened. The school allegedly investigated the matter. The girls denied it, and they were still there. And this is what's really interesting. So, in addition to the fact that we haven't advanced gender equality, we've also got the proud place of being the number one country in the world with the highest statistics of schoolyard bullying in the world. And so that sparked my desire and curiosity to start looking into whether there was a pattern or whether in fact we were dragging some of this schoolyard behaviour into the workplace. So that's what really got me started on it.
Yeah, and that particular story can really get me started because I have a stepdaughter who is 39 years of age who went to that same school, who at 39 years of age is still struggling today with the impact of having been bullied in that same schoolyard.
I don't even know what to do with that, Di, honestly, but I guess that's why the book has been written.
Yeah, and it is such a divisive experience for somebody to go through, and I know in our own household, you know, what the impact of that has been. Not to mention the example that you talked about that ended in tragedy. So this is not to be something to be taken lightly. This is something to be really called out and shown in all of its long-term impact and the damage that it can do.
Absolutely, Di, and I think the other issue is, and I know we're going to get into the conversation, is that it's not just happening in the schoolyard. And, you know, another part of the impetus for me getting this book out is the fact that I have seen in my high-performance coaching practice and my work with leaders, I have had 2 clients actually take their own lives as a result of this. And so I'm one of those people, you know, I'm a keyboard warrior of a different nature. I use my keyboard for the powers of good. For good. Yeah. And so I just couldn't stay silent. I had to do something about that. But really important part, I guess, of the book is also that it's not just me feeling this or saying, oh, it's something that I'm sensing. You know, this is something that, to put the sisterhood paradox out in the world as a scientist and as a behavioural specialist, I had to go back and find out what was going on. And that is a big cornerstone of this book. If anyone is concerned that it's just me kind of using my intuition and, you know, giving my opinion, it is. But it's also very heavily evidence-backed and research-driven. And the research and the evidence in this book is going to blow you away. I don't know that anyone is prepared for what I reveal and just how pervasive this is.
So let's put some context behind that without giving all of the stats, Vanessa. But you've worked with ASX and Fortune 100 leaders.
Yes.
How often does this issue of bullying women come up, or women bullying women come up in your work?
Frequently. In fact, it's so frequent, in fact, that it's probably where I spend the most time when I'm working with female senior leaders or executives, more often than not. And that might surprise some of your listeners as well.
That hijacks that part of your time.
At the higher levels for women, this tends to be in the top 3 issues that comes up, and I spend most of my time either trying to help them manage it and navigate it, or helping them get out. And that's really where the conversations go, because of the fact that it has such deleterious impact on the psyche of these women, and particularly because, and I know we're going to get into it a little bit, but particularly because almost in the moment they don't believe it. It's almost like this experience where they feel like they're hallucinating, that this is really happening, because of course, why would a woman try to take me down? That's not possible. Women are kind, they're caring, they're compassionate. So it's something that is unexpected and therefore tucked away and remains unaddressed and undealt with.
Is it unexpected?
Well, it is in a lot of cases.
Maybe I'm a cynic because, I mean, I went to an all-girls school. I grew up in a schoolyard that was not for the faint-hearted and had to literally grow a pair to survive early on. So I think I went into university and into the workplace expecting it, encountered it, coped with it. So that's kind of why I challenge, is it unexpected? But clearly for many, as you suggested, in fact is.
Well, it's unexpected for people who haven't experienced it before. That's what I'd say to you.
And the workplace could be the first place they've come head on. Yeah.
Sometimes it is. I mean, that wasn't my experience either, Di. I went through extraordinary bullying at school by other females. And so I get where you're coming from. And so that has always made me more aware and very careful about.
Well, it angers me because you and I are not 20 or 30, and it means it's been going on for a bloody long time, and it still is.
Still is, but I think it's for the woman who's going into the working world and who has never gone through that. And a lot of women haven't. In fact, I've had a lot of women in writing this book that have said to me, why are you writing this book? Like, this doesn't happen. I find that really, I think, geez, what planet have you been on? I think to myself, honestly, I think, really? God, lucky you. But there are those women who, going into the working world, it is their first experience. And I think they're the ones who are blindsided, they're sucker punched, they're unexpected, because they don't ever believe that a sister would take them down or actively try to target them, aggressively, or bully them in those cases. And so more often than not, that's the scenario in the workplace I'm dealing with. I haven't had the experience before. There's something going on, but I don't really get it. I don't understand it. Is this really happening? And then the other place these women go to always, as we do, it's me. It's my fault. I'm the crap bag here. I'm the one that has all the problems. So it makes sense that somebody's being nasty to me because it's validating my low self-worth, and I'm going to hand that over. And so this is really, it's such a complex psychological battering situation.
And it's important to state this is not all women in the workplace. I mean, you and I could reel off a string of names of fabulous, supportive and empowering female leaders. So we're not throwing everybody in this bucket. But do women who bully women also target men as their subjects? Sometimes. But look, the stats on this are clear. The prevalence is that 70% of women are bullied by other women. That's the reality. 70%.
70%. Over half, yeah, more than half. Does that mean that women don't bully men? No, they do. In fact, when I wrote this book, I've had men come to me and say, V, which is what they call me, why didn't you talk about, women bullying men? And I said, well, that's probably another book. I'm really sorry I didn't cover it this time. But it's, what's really interesting? Here's a point, Di. Whether it's a man or a woman being bullied by a woman, the men are also psychologically scarred. I've had guys in fetal position in coaching sessions absolutely terrorised, not knowing what to do for the same reasons. They don't expect women to be bullies. So it's really interesting. It kind of goes both ways, but psychologically the impacts are far more harmful. And this is what the research shows as well.
So what's behind this behaviour? Where's it stem from?
Look, there's a couple of things. I want to start by saying, to your point earlier, do I think that women are inherently more mean than men? No, I don't. Of course not. I don't think it's a gender thing. But what I do think is, and talking about the workplace, with so few of us in senior leadership roles, in stewardship positions and decision-making roles, what you have is an organisational environment where women are pitted against one another for competitive advantage. There's a scarcity issue going on. And so what happens? Naturally, the instinct kicks in, and we can even inadvertently, because a lot of women aren't even aware that they're doing it. This is
the survival piece kicks in, and it manifests in a very ugly way.
It is, and a really good example of that one is people who don't understand, or women that don't understand, and men, that the silent treatment or ghosting is one of the most insidious forms of bullying that you can use. And I tell that to people and they say, really? And yeah.
Well, we know
oh my God, I've been doing
silence,
that.
because silence can be so much more powerful than the spoken word.
So this is what I'm finding. It's just there is a lack of a bit of ignorance, and I don't mean that in a rude way, but there is not enough clarity around understanding what the different types of workplace aggressions look like, how they differ, and what the different forms of bullying are. So there's the ability to name it and identify it is really, really important. And that's where it starts, that education piece. A lot of men and women don't know what it looks like. And it's because more often than not, although things have changed these days, tactics that women use aren't seen. It's why they're called the pink elephant. It means the illusion. They're invisible, they're indirect, and they're much harder to identify. Although things are starting to change, and definitely with the advent of technology, what we're seeing is a lot more overt, brazen bullying, particularly in the media and social media. So things around trolling, things like that, and cyberbullying is starting to pick up wind and momentum. So that's a far more...
And that's not happening just behind closed doors in our kids' rooms.
No, It's moved. Cyberbullying has made it even more overt, and people are becoming more bold and sophisticated, and it's having more reach now. And we can see that in so many stories and so many, TV stars that are coming out, media personalities, sporting personalities, where people are being targeted more overtly. But here's the problem. What are we doing about it? It's still allowed. Nobody is stepping in. And I read an article a little while ago.
High performers get away with a lot, we know that, whether it be sport or business.
That's right.
Yeah.
I read an article very recently which called Australia's workplaces as the gutless workplace landscape.
Oof.
Yeah, calling us out as gutless leaders because of the fact that because of the bullying at work, we allow it to happen.
Tell me, you've intimated that there've been some tragic outcomes with some of the women that you have coached. Have you in fact found yourself coaching the bully?
Many times.
Yeah.
That's such a good question. Many times. And it's one of those things where honestly, two things happen. Either the female bully is, and I'm going to go here at another level, has high levels of psychopathology or narcissism. Okay. When I'm coaching a highly narcissistic female, usually I end the coaching arrangement because I know that there are limitations on openness and that often they're ticking a box for board approval.
Yeah.
So I won't continue that relationship or I'll pass them on to someone else. That's when I identify that. And usually I can do that within about the first 3 sessions. I usually go through my checklist because I know that they're just there to be there and to say all the right things, and I'm not wasting my time with that. The other person is the one who isn't aware, as I mentioned before. And I mean that sincerely. There are some, many executive women who aren't aware of what they're actually doing. They also have interesting limiting beliefs. No one helped me, so why should I help anyone else? Why should I help you? There was no one to help me. And so we work through that, right? We say, well,
you can overcome that. That's a pity someone feels that way, but you can overcome that through coaching.
Absolutely you can, and I've done it many times, and those women are completely changed. And I must share with you something around that as well. I had the opportunity to speak at the World Economic Forum in January at Davos, and I was expecting this room, sorry girls and guys, I was expecting this room of, very privileged, elitist, egocentric people. I've got to be honest. I was expecting it. Many of them, they are someone, And what I instead encountered were the most humble, open, progressive, group of people, and on the live stream as well, who just want to do better for the world. And so
Thank
it
God
gave
for
me
that.
thank God, it gave me extraordinary faith about what's possible. And I was interviewed about the sisterhood paradox, unexpectedly, but it was a good thing. And most women in the room applauded the conversation
Because they felt it.
And they are ready for it. They felt it. So it actually created this incredible camaraderie amongst the women and men in the room. And then later they did a lot of posts talking about the number one revelation they had at Davos was that the sisterhood is broken and needs to be fixed. Which is great.
So there's probably listeners going, does this relate to me? Am I experiencing this? There's something going on in the workplace. So to that point, is it always obvious, like exclusion or passive-aggressive behaviour, or could it be more insidious and actually disguised as concern?
Oh, definitely. It's all of those things, and that's why it's so hard to pinpoint. So the first thing I'd say to your listeners is, and to everybody listening, is be really careful about what you term bullying. So it's really important to figure out what is the nature of what's actually happening. But what I'd say to you, if your gut is firing and you're feeling upset or dread or you're stressed at seeing a certain person, then it's probably worth going a little bit deeper into understanding what's actually happening and what that toxicity looks like. So what is it? Somebody just rolling their eyes at you isn't bullying, okay? So let's not get emotional about that. It's disrespectful, and it's not cool. But it's unlikely to be the type of level of bullying that I'm kind of talking about, unless it's persistent. And here's the rub. If it's persistent eye rolling, if it's persistent rude remarks, that are designed to have you questioning your self-worth or demote you or minimise you in some way on a consistent basis, then I would say to you that you are probably a target. But if it's the one-off, then it's unlikely to be that. And that's the big difference. So it's things like, gaslighting you. So saying that you said something when you didn't, for example, spreading rumours about you, whether it's based on your competence, something that you didn't do,
or even worse, personal.
Well, slut shaming is a term. Okay, I wasn't sure whether I could say that, so I hesitated, which is really, spreading rumours about you being promiscuous or getting the job because you've slept with someone, and that's a big one. Fat shaming is one that's on the rise as well, where somebody comments on your physical appearance to make you feel less than. And then, of course, the other one is mobbing, and this is kind of more...
I don't know that term.
So mobbing is a more sophisticated tactic being used at the moment, I'm hearing a lot about, which is where the bully actually recruits others to do the bullying for them.
So as the word would suggest, power in numbers.
Power in numbers, and the bully walks away like Teflon woman, scot-free, and it's all of the other people that are involved in the mobbing situation that are actually targeting that individual. So that's a big part of it as well. And then obviously there's the cyber version as well. So I think the first thing then is really, what is it? What's the toxicity? Is it one-off? Are you being overly sensitive, or is there a persistent pattern where you're being targeted by a certain individual? So that would be the first place that you would really have to identify. And to be able to manage any kind of these situations, you can't if you haven't worked through it and removed the emotion. And I know how hard that sounds, but speaking to a very prominent female leader in our country who has gone through this recently in a political battle, I asked her how she managed to get through it.
I think we might know who that is, but we'll compare notes on that offline.
What she said to me was this: I had to work through it with someone independent and get control of my emotions. I had to figure out what was going on. And then I had to treat it like a lawyer preparing for a case. So what she eventually did is she documented what was going on, looked at it with support, and then took them down and won the case. But But we don't always have that privilege, unfortunately.
No.
So
No. Well, coming up, let's look at whether workplaces are getting better or worse. And also, I think more importantly for somebody listening, Vanessa, let's look at what to do if you find yourself on the receiving end. If you're loving the Power of Women podcast, be sure to jump on to our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button to ensure you never miss an episode. So coming back on our discussion, Vanessa, you've argued that the culture in many organisations hasn't, in fact, improved. It's gone backwards.
Yeah.
What's contributing to the regression in the workplace?
Look, I think there are a few things I've talked about. Predominantly, people just don't know how to deal with this. They don't know how to deal with bullying. Firstly, with female on female bullying, they can't identify it. Some people don't even believe it's happening. It's not even a thing. It's just women. That's just what women do. So there's a couple of things going on there, right? They don't have the skills to address it, and so there's also a lack of bravery in organisations. And as I mentioned before, talking about Australia as having gutless workplaces, it's pretty brutal. But in fact, that's very, very telling and makes sense given the level of workplace bullying and workplace aggression and what's happening in our schools. We're not prepared to step in. But it's also because we don't have the skills. So being able to build cultures and organisations that are psychologically safe is where we need to start. We need to actually honour and celebrate bravery in our leadership. And that courage needs to be a non-negotiable in the way we lead. The other thing that's going on kind of at a systemic level is because we're all trying to navigate this VUCA context, this high velocity, turbulent, uncertain conditions, people are stressed out already. They're stressed out. They're often presenting as the worst version of themselves, and they might not have the emotional bandwidth, in fairness, to say, you know what, I've got nothing left to give. I'm just trying to get by. So I don't want to deal with this situation because it's just another stress to add to the mix. And so I want to be fair in how I present this. There's a lot of stuff going on, but I would say, what happens if we don't? What happens if we don't? And if we don't, there's some big things going on. One, we don't have the talent and the perspective and the diversity that we need to actually build organisations that can actually move the world forward, where everybody can thrive. We actually go backwards as a race and as a business. And so there are bigger, more kind of higher calling goals that we need to be thinking about, and not just in addressing this issue.
You've already suggested that the fact that there's not many women in the room or only one female at the table has contributed to this. But how do we stop that being part of the competitive culture that is driving this bullying behaviour?
We have to have more women in seats. We have to put more women into leadership positions. So we have to create cultures where that can happen. And, I think the more you can out what's happening, the more you can shine a light on that this is an issue, the more we can educate ourselves and become equipped in knowing what it is, how to deal with it, and call it out. So name it, face it, change it. And that's how you're going to do it. It's got to be overt, and we have to have a zero tolerance to this type of behaviour, whether it be from a man or a woman, quite frankly.
Are there organisations that don't even realise it's going on or are in denial?
Oh, absolutely. Many, many, many. And more so the case that, as I said, quite a number of CEOs that I've worked with will say to me, well, I don't really think it's an issue. So it's really been interesting to get their feedback with the release of this book, and I've given them a copy and I have a read and let's have a chat, And then the response has been, oh my God, I had no idea, like sincerely, because it's not always obvious, right? Or it's just women, that's just what women do. So the way I've flipped that narrative, particularly for male CEOs and board members, is I've asked them, with what you know now, would you want your daughter coming to work in your organisation, or your wife, or your sister, or your mother? How would you feel given what you know now? Oh my God.
It's a different view.
So what are you going to do about it? So when you make it personal and you put them in the seat of the experience, it changes everything. And that's how I'm starting to affect change at scale with many of the leaders in big CEO roles, driving roles, to actually turn the situation around, and just by raising awareness, which is why I've written the book, so that then we can do something about it.
So let's look at an individual level. If somebody's finding themselves in this situation on the receiving end, what is the best way to respond to it?
Okay, so the first thing, know what it is, be able to identify it, and go and get some help or a sounding board to talk it out, whether that be an independent person. Now, it's not always going to be the person in your organisation, right? It really depends on, people say go and speak to HR, and no offence to any human resource people here, but often HR isn't necessarily trusted. So you've got to make sure that you share this with people that you trust and whose opinion you respect, that can give you independent advice to figure out what's actually going on.
That's an interesting point, isn't it? Because, we would all know, and we've heard, in the press of scenarios where people have gone to the one place that they've been suggested to speak to and are completely unsupported, and that's HR.
Unsupported. I would go to an organisational psychologist like me. That's kind of what we do. Somebody who's specialised in workplace psychology. An EAP provider isn't necessarily going to be able to give you that, because that's a clinical person.
And there are combative ways that actually add to the issue if you take a litigious stance as well. And of course, then there's the fear of retribution if in fact you go down that route.
100%. With the workplace scenario, you've got to be really strategic. You've got to figure out what's going on. You've got to get some advice. You've actually got to prepare a case and figure out a game plan. And once you've done all that work and you've figured it out, you've understood the nature of the beast, what's actually happening, how it's affecting you, and you've worked through it, so you're in a rational brain, then you have to make a decision. So what I'd say to you is, if, for example, you identify that the person that's bullying you is in a position of power and who's a narcissist, you know what? Chances are you're unlikely to change a damn thing, because if that person's been put into that position...
Other than your exposure.
Other than your exposure. So start looking for something else. Now, I understand that there are some people that are in roles that are very much hand to mouth. With those situations, what I'd say to you is you need to see your situation as a job, not as a career. You need to make decisions around, how do I make this job work for me? It's paying the bills right now, but really actively put your energy and attention into finding something new so that you can leave, okay? Because sometimes you're not going to change it, particularly if it's somebody who is a narcissist or is a psychopath, or in a position of power where it's unlikely to change. The other thing I'd say to you is, if your organisation does not have a culture where bravery and psychological safety exists, then chances are you're not going to be supported. So, do you really want to be there?
You can see why sporting environments are so problematic, because they're born to be competitive. So, yeah.
They are,
and similarly, politics the same thing, because it's it's a destination that pits people against each other on other sides of the room. So it's no wonder that it's so prevalent in those settings.
Well, it is, and interesting, those settings that you have described are known as female hothouse environments.
Okay.
That's the term. Yeah, it's a real thing. So it's looking at sporting organisations. I interviewed quite a few sporting people, and there's Lane Beachley's in there as well, and she's a bully. She's a self-professed bully. So that's an interesting story. CEOs of sporting organisations, political, the health sector, and teaching environments, just as a retail sector as well. Yeah, so all of these environments where we've got just a dominant of females in one kind of greenhouse can be extremely challenging. So wear your raincoat when you go to work, because chances are you are going to have some kind of experience which is not necessarily going to be positive. And I think we need to get really real about that. If that's not something that you want to swim in or be in, then make very strategic choices about how you want to play and the job you want to do, and how you want your working life to feel and be, because those decisions will change everything for you. The final thing I'd say to you is with this, whilst you're figuring out your next move, don't leave it too long, because often if we are the target of a bully or the target of consistent workplace aggression, we leave it until we've lost our confidence, we've lost our courage, and we've got nothing left to give. We've got no energy then to go and find something else and put our best foot forward.
Very important point.
Right? Nobody's going to hire a sad sack in the interview. Let's face it. So don't be that person.
Yeah. Yeah, and if somebody listening feels that they're on the receiving end, that is such an important point. You need to realise the impact it might be having on you, and you've got to step up and start to defend yourself, whether that be overtly or strategically, to get yourself out of the situation.
Absolutely, so that when you do find that next move, you're not actually impacting your future career prospects, because it will. It hasn't broken you. And this is often, so some of the female executives I work with is through a career transition, where they come to me for career transition. So they've actually left the organisation.
Either
sometimes,
by choice or other.
Or a gardening leave or whatever it is.
Yep.
And they're looking for new roles. And they are absolutely in a puddle of their former selves. So before we can even get them starting to look for another opportunity, I've got to get them back to baseline.
I've seen that, unfortunately, firsthand, yeah.
It's terrible. It's heartbreaking, you know? So we've got to work on their confidence and remind them of who they are first. Say, hey, you're actually an extraordinary, capable, motivating, high-powered, engaging executive female. Look at your track record. Like, come on, sister, you've got this. So I almost have to spend the first 3 months just getting them back to where they were before they went through the experience. It's too frequent, I'm afraid.
How much, interestingly, and got to confess some of my viewing. So I enjoy reading and watching highbrow literature, and sometimes we all enjoy escapism and trash. So I do absorb and view some of the Real Housewives series, select portfolio of the ones around the world. But if we bring that back to home, and particularly to the most recent series of The Real Housewife of Sydney, so Bravo is never going to recruit me as a housewife, but ironically once was asked, to which my response is I'd rather be dead. But I watched the latest 2025 Sydney season with absolute disbelief, because the level of vitriol and aggression, trumped up with lipstick and glamorizing it as being, you know, a powerful place to stand in this world, was absolutely gobsmacking. How much of that is perpetuating the damage out there that it is okay to be like this?
Well, it is, because it's glamorizing abuse. Because that's what it is. It's emotional abuse. It's glamorizing abuse, and it's, making it an endorsed and sanctioned behaviour that is just part of women being women. So, at a higher level, what it's actually doing is it's actually, again, not enabling us to move forward in gender equality.
Yeah,
so those
sets us
types
back
of
a long way, in my
it's
view.
setting us back a long way. And this is what I'm saying about media accountability. And look, they're just doing it to make the buck, because why? Drama sells.
Yeah, and they edit it in such a way or create an environment that becomes a hotbed for temperaments to flare.
It does, but I guess the problem with it is it's not, fictitious drama. It's real. It is real. It's Real Housewives of Sydney. Okay, so it's basically, showing us that this is just life. It's normalizing toxic relationships between women, and. I look at that and I just actually feel despair. I think, well, what hope do we have if this is what we're up against? So I really believe the media needs to take a leading position in bigger impacts of what they're actually putting out. And I'll share with you, Di, and I hadn't planned to go here, but when I wrote my second book, Unreasonable Ambition, I was working with a leader in the oil and gas space. So, they are vilified. And there was one journalist who reported on me 6 times. Now, I don't know, in a very vitriolic, takedown way. Don't know her from a bar of soap, but I kept wondering, is anybody going to step in here? How could this person be allowed to talk like this? And it's really interesting. There is no accountability anymore. It's anything goes. And so I do think we need regulation, and I would like to see people stepping in and actually saying, you know what, this doesn't serve the human race. This is setting us back, and we need to take a position on this. Where are the watchdogs around this? Seriously.
It's an interesting point. So where would you say the true vision for sisterhood is in the professional world?
The true vision is that we are not going to have the same levels of respect, the same opportunities, emboldened leadership positions as men if we don't change this. This is something we can change. And so my request, my plea, my desire is that we commit to actually lifting women and not putting them down. Now, I'm not saying that there's an expectation that you do that just because you've gone into a senior leadership role, and I think sometimes we need to manage those expectations, but don't do the reverse. So either commit to lifting another woman, but don't tear them down. Make a decision when you're in a key role to do something positive. You have a decision to make, and I think by doing that, by trying to help each other or not doing the reverse, we're actually going to move the dial a little bit for women in this world, because it is holding us back. 70% is a very high number. So what are we going to do about it? It's breathtakingly high. And I think the other piece for me is the intergenerational consequences of this.
Yeah.
So it's starting early. So if anybody's listening that has a child, that has a daughter, if you care about this, then you need to, and you feel like this is an issue and you are behaving in this way, change your behaviour, because you are going to create possibly a daughter who does the same, who mimics you. You are her greatest teacher. You are her greatest example. Don't do it. Don't do it. Let's make some different choices and let's commit to actually evolving from where we are right now.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is, if you see it, speak up, brave up. If you have knowledge that this is happening and you see it going on, whether it's to you or not, help that sister get some help. Go and talk to somebody about it. Be there as part of their support, and don't go silent. Don't go silent. Let's start talking about this.
Yeah, I think that's a very powerful message, and thank you for that. Vanessa, how does somebody find your business outside of writing the Sisterhood Paradox and other literature? How does somebody find you if they want to engage your services?
Oh, thanks, Di. So my website is www.vanessavershaw.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram under my name. So reach out if you want to have a chat, you want to learn more, or you want to engage me to do anything with you and help you in any way. I would be more than willing to have those conversations. But also I'd like to hear from people, any stories that you have or experiences that you have, particularly after you've read the book as well, that maybe I haven't mentioned or covered. Maybe I've missed something. And if I have, I want to know about it. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
And I'd just like to reiterate that there's something that comes with age by way of confidence and perhaps a slightly reduced tolerance level that I know you'll relate to, Vanessa. And I now have the confidence to combat what might come my way but in the form of bullying that I didn't have earlier in my career. So this is why we get together and have discussions like this for Power of Women. And I know it has been pointed out to me before that the title Power of Women would suggest we're only talking to 50% of the workplace. However, there are men who have daughters and sisters and wives, and we're talking to you too, because it's important to share discussions like this with those that you care for to help them become aware, to tool up and combat what they might be experiencing in their own lives. So the title might be Power of Women, but we're not just talking to the girls.
No, we're not, and that's such a great point, Di, and I think so many men have bought this book actually because there's a whole section on, as a male leader, what you can do to change this. So please grab the book if you are interested or you would like to change your workplace so that you can create it as a place where the women in your life can thrive.
Yeah. Absolutely. Please be sure to share this with somebody else in your circle of or network or as a circle of influence, because it's an important episode to listen to. Follow myself and Vanessa on the social platforms and on our respective websites. And the Power of Women podcast has a raft of other discussions that will also be informative in the library, which you can access via Spotify or Apple or the YouTube channel or off my website under the podcast tab. So thanks for listening. Hopefully you will share. We'd love you joining us. Until next time.